Hello Bloggineers, we are at the San Jose Museum of Art. Last time we were here, the museum was partly closed because they were installing new exhibits, so there was a lot of curtains and we couldn't see what was behind them. But today we're getting a behind the scenes tour of the
Today we're getting behind the scenes tour of the museum.
Yeah. But today we'll get a behind the Today we're getting a behind the scenes tour of the museum so we can see how they install the art.
Yeah, and go.
Today we're getting a behind the scenes tour of the museum so we can see how they install the art. So,
In there.
So you'll be able to see this one today. We'll get you downstairs to the restroom.
Okay, and go.
first we're entering the exhibitions department. First we're entering the exhibitions department.
Alright, and go.
First, we're entering the exhibitions department at the basement of the museum, and this is where they plan all the installations. Okay. And this is where they plan all the installations that end up going upstairs for the public to see.
There's some old floor plans of exhibits that we've done before. So if you guys come over here, I can give you a little quick overview. It's shift up. We roll it onto the elevator.
Experience and Education Department.
Okay.
Yeah, normally when we have an
Called SketchUp. And so this is the project that we're building in the gallery. And this software allows us to zoom in, make decisions, and do some of our problem solving in advance, making sure that the whole piece will work exactly according to specifications in the galleries. So this is where it sort of starts based on the artist's installation instructions. Possible, we will build a model of the rooms that we are building, especially the more complicated ones. So what you see here is a room that will be completely black on all 6 sides, ceiling, floor, and 4 walls. The blue lines represent a glowing light tape that will be installed in the space. This is a giant screen that's supported by a truss, and we'll be able to see all of this in progress up in the galleries today. But one of the things it really helps us do is solve problems before we actually get into the space. So we need to decide how big the room was, so this helped us with that. But if you take a close look at the outside of the model, and you see some of these little wires and things like that, we basically took the requirements for the piece and wired a miniature version of it together. So they're not plugged into anything, but we went through the process to attach all the components. And what this helped us do was sort of solve the problems, figure out how much material we needed, and then when it comes time to be working in the space, we've already sort of gone through the process and we understand what needs to be done. So these models take a lot of time to be built. This model was built by my colleague Dan Becker, and it's really a wonderful tool for us to help understand exactly what it is that we're doing once we get up into the galleries. So, and it is to scale, which means that 1 inch equals 1 foot.
Oh.
And so if we wanted to place a little person in there, we know that like a 5-foot person, that's sort of how they will feel in the space. But it also, again, answers a lot of questions for us and helps communicate to our team members exactly what it is that we're building here.
It'll be in the actual room also, right?
It'll be in the actual room.
It's not just like a grid for reference.
It will be in the actual room. So here's some of the pictures again. These are just stills that were taken from the model that I showed you. So I'm just gonna kind of do a little explanation, but then you guys take it away. If you have questions, you want to comment, whatever, I just want to let you know sort of what's in front of you and what you're looking at. So these are little still images that were taken from the model. You can freeze frame it and print it. So again, this gives you a sense of what is this going to look like when you're standing in this space once it's done. And this is designed long before it's ever built, so you really get to understand how it's going to feel. And you can make decisions about how big is the truss, where do the chairs go, and things like that. So multiple images for reference for the installation team. One of the things that we do is we're planners. We have to list out when does everything happen. So step A has to happen before step B, and so on and so forth. So we have to attribute time for each of those projects, identify what they are, and make sure that we have enough time to go ahead and do this project. And then give us a little buffer so that we can test the piece before we open it up to our public. This is the tape. Please don't touch it, but you can look at it. Safe, but just to be abundantly careful. This is what's going on the gallery walls. So we will run this all the way around in all 3 dimensions, right? So around like a belt, over your head this way, and then over your head this way. And once the piece is installed, the only light source in the room will be a projection, the light tape, and that's it. No light fixtures will be in there at all. And if you want to kind of walk around, you can see the video over here. One of the production and test all of the equipment. So here's where we decide which equipment we're going to use, and we run it on our media players, and we make sure that the video runs properly long before we put it in the galleries. We don't want to just take something and put it up and have a problem, so we test it down here to make sure everything's going really well. So really that's sort of what happens down here. This is a lot of the equipment, a lot of the tools that we use to help plan an exhibition. Yeah.
We're now going to be in the gallery.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. This is the video. This is it's supposed to be like that, where it looks kind of choppy, and then it goes back to the beginning. They go through and they keep the galleries looking really sharp all the time. So what that means is, like, on the days that we're closed and that we have no visitors, they go through and they dust things and they paint the walls and they paint footprints and stuff. Well, one day somebody left a roller on a piece of cardboard and it got stuck. And so I installed it on my door as a door knocker, so that if somebody comes to my door, they can do that.
Yes.
That's true. So yeah, I guess I can explain that. So we usually do a calendar for each show, and what it does is it helps. What's nice about the Post-it format is you can move them around to different part of the installation. So for example, on this one, this color here, of a certain artist's work. This color here is a different artist's exhibition being installed. The orange represents all the graphics, the labels, the title walls, the vinyl, and so on and so forth. Blue is fabrication. So each thing is color-coded to sort of identify a particular step at a particular time.
And go.
Here are some of the museum layouts for.
I should walk down the corner.
As you walk down the corridor, you can see sketches of museum layouts from the past. So they tell you all the little art pieces. Oh wait. So they tell you all the art pieces here and where they're placed. And I'm pretty sure it's to scale because it says 1/4 of an inch equals 1 foot. Wow.
Hold it.
Okay.
It's a it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All the sketches also have different labels because the exhibitions change. Like this one has geometric abstraction in this room, magic realism in this room, American art in this room, and so on.
Alright, so behind me, there we go. Oh, behind us?
Behind us is their giant elevator where they
Transport?
art.
Yeah.
Behind us is their giant not elevator. hold on. Behind us is their giant elevator where they transport art from the loading dock on the street. Then they can bring it down here. And I think it also goes to the exhibition rooms. Is that right? Okay. Hold on. And we've been inside one of these types of elevators before at LACMA, so I know it's really cool being in there because it's so huge and you can fit cars and huge art pieces. Oh yeah. And you can fit cars and huge art pieces in there. This is what the inside looks like. That's cool.
What's that noise?
Alright, there we go.
This room is where they plan all the future exhibit. Yeah, I'll say exhibit.
Yeah, exhibits, right, yeah.
This room is where they plan all the future exhibits. So starting with this box, every inch represents 1 foot. So this is going to be a future installation. All the blue lines are going to be light strips. Is that what they're called? All the blue lines are going to be light strips, and they're over here. Inside this particular exhibit, there's going to only be 2 light sources. One is from the projector, which will be playing that video, and the other is just the light strips. And they have the museum staff have their whole list of things to do planned out here, all the way till August 3rd. And by August 3rd, they should be done, I guess.
Say something about the video. Go.
And over here is the video that's gonna be inside the room that brother showed you, the one with light strips. Oh,
There we go.
This video is about many different things, but one of the most important is that the people dancing are dancing to the people dancing are doing it to gather to get energy, to generate
Yeah,
energy.
sure, yeah.
One thing the video is about, hold on, I'll restart.
Sure.
This video, the video that will be playing upstairs is about many different things, but one of them is that these people are dancing to generate energy to power the planet. Dance, no.
Just slash.
Brother's going to dance with the. Brother's gonna dance with the people.
whatever.
Alright, here we go.
This guy is Pee Wee Herman, and I'm gonna set him here. And since this model's to scale, I think he might be 5 inches. Is he 5 inches?
He's about 4.5 or 5 feet tall.
Okay. Well, if he's 4.5 inches, that means that in real life he'll be 4.5 feet. So if I put him there, then just imagine being that little guy, and you see this big. Just imagine being this little guy and you see this big screen in front of you. Well, that's what the exhibit's gonna be like. No. I will. Stop.
Do the wiring in real life, and it helps solve some problems about where to put the wires.
But these wires don't actually connect to electricity.
No, it was just sort of going through so we could decide like, okay, 4 feet in.
Oh, the floor is.
Okay, alright, go.
And the last thing I want to mention before we go up to the galleries is the wiring. So this model is to scale, which means that this wiring is also to scale. For every inch of wiring here, it's 1 foot of wiring in real life. And this helps them plan how they place their wires so that the exhibit can light up. And it looks pretty cool. Also these vertical black things are going to be spaced out like that too.
Yeah.
So they can say, oh, this thing has to go 4 boards. Never mind. No, wait, hold on. I'm going to read
We're creating a hard edge.
south, east, north, west.
That's the one you saw upstairs where when you walked by the image, you know, the wall.
Oh,
You may have noticed behind on some of the diagrams, there's sort of a behind the scenes space that we need. We need this so when the light tape that you saw downstairs comes through the wall, we're going to do our wiring in a secret area where nobody can see it, because nobody wants to see that when they're looking at the piece. Also, the big truss and the screen haven't been assembled yet. We're storing the parts in there. You can take a look at that. But try to remember the model when you see this. Secret door.
Wow.
So just be careful of this little step.
Oh, that's the light tape. That's the light tape.
Right.
Oh, smells here.
So here is, if you imagine now that your Herman is 4.5 feet tall, this is what it looks like to him. So this is the truss that will eventually bring in the room after they're done preparing the floor. So we'd already built this up and tested it, make sure all the parts go together. Right now we're just storing it here until they finish installing the floor. This is all those things that you saw on the model. And we haven't done our wiring yet because we still have to finish the floor. Once the floor goes in, the wires will come through the wall. The only ones that are coming through the wall right now are the lines that run horizontally like belts. And so this is what they look like. There's a little bit that comes through, and then we'll do some wiring into these power supplies, and they'll all be organized on the wall. So here's
Okay.
Now I feel like I'm Mr. Herman because that's the top of the wall all the way up there, and he hold on, because that's the top of the wall all the way there. So yeah, I think the scale was right because I'm about as tall as Herman would be if he was a real life human. This is the light tape, and this looks all pretty much identical to the model earlier. Actually, it's exactly the same, except the wires are still not here yet because they haven't completed the installation. Right? They're not here. I don't think they are. Are they here?
no, just the 3 in the corner here. The rest will come through a little bit later.
And on the other side of this wall is where the exhibit will be. So we're gonna go there next. Just do B-roll.
Okay.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Remember, it's a work in progress, so it doesn't look exactly like the model,
Yeah.
but we've got parts of it in place.
Alright, you're saying now we're going to get go?
What? Okay. Wait, what?
And now we're going to take a sneak peek.
We're gonna take a sneak peek at the exhibit with the light, shoot, what are they called?
The light tapes.
Is it light tape or light?
Alright, and go.
We're gonna take a sneak peek at this exhibit. We're gonna take a sneak peek at this exhibit. It's a work in progress. It's based on the model that we saw downstairs earlier, and it's called Factory of the Sun. Let's go inside.
here as our model. Here we go. So this is Dan and Aaron. These are members of our exhibitions department. They work here full time with me. We were all involved together in the planning and the building of this piece. They're in the process of putting the rubber on the floor. So one of the first things we did was once the walls were built, once we decided how those needed to be placed in the space, we painted the ceiling, and then we put in panels that we had covered with rubber, screwed those to the wall. Then we installed the light tape. So the light tape, each band that goes all the way around is comprised of two pieces. So think of it as like two L shapes. What am I doing? Two L shapes that create a rectangle, right? So one piece starts, for example, there, it goes down, and we'll pop out the wall. The other comes down, and we'll run across the floor once the floor is installed and pops out the wall. So what you see coiled on the wall, we're just getting them up out of the way. Once the floor is installed, this will unravel and travel across. The one that's over there is much shorter. It'll just go straight down to the floor and out, and then we'll create this light rectangle. And if you look around, there's really quite a few pieces of light tape that have gone in here. One of the tricky things that we had to do, in order for this to be a grid that is a square, comprised of squares, we had to make sure that the room, you guys ready for some math? Was divisible by that square in all three dimensions. So for example, we came up with a 45-inch square. Now 45 inches goes into how many inches it is from the floor to the ceiling, and then we determined where these walls would be built so that we got an exact square. So you didn't build your wall and then you had a square, 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 and got to the end, it was a tiny little rectangle. So we had to plan it in such a way that when you look down on the space, it's all a grid, and whatever wall, whatever surface you look at, it's a grid.
I have no idea what that meant.
That makes sense. Basically, so that half a square. Or
If I had Legos, I could show you. I just have to say, just come over here. Just be careful with this. You see, it's starting to happen. One of the things that we did is, you see these white lines on the floor? Those represent the grid, and what we did is we took a laser. It's pretty amazing. It's a laser that shoots in 3 dimensions. So we would, once we did our math and made sure that all the squares were the same size, if you set a laser on this white line, it can shoot a line all the way around the room, and then it can also shoot a line this way. So you can line it up and when it's in a particular spot, and then once it's lined up, then you know where to put your tape on the wall. So it was a very, very important tool for us to use in putting this whole thing together. Obviously, as you can see, it'll be covered up when the rubber goes on the floor, but it's part of the process of how we put this together, and one of the tools that we use to make sure that everything ended up in the right spot. So this rubber is very thin. It's only like about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so that's just like this much. And what else? Yeah, the light tape. We have one piece plugged in right now for you to see. But just imagine when all is said and done, these light fixtures will come out. That giant truss will be right here. We'll put some white chairs here, and I'm really hopeful that you all can come back when we're done and see this installed. Because it'll also, one thing that's very different from this point in time, it's got a wonderful soundtrack and sound component to it, so this room will be full of sound as well as a giant image. So right now it's kind of quiet, you hear your voice echoing. When you're here, you see the piece installed, very different experience. And, any other questions about?
shoot, why is there only 3 bottles?
What? Yeah, we're only for 3.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
This is the room, and right now they only lit up one light tape because they only plugged it in with that piece of tape. But later on, when it's completed, all of these light tapes that you see forming grids around the room will light up. Also, when they were planning the room, they had to make sure that all the squares of light tapes. Also, when they were planning the room, they had to make sure that all the squares of light tapes were complete squares and that they perfectly fit from the left side of a wall to the right side, and same with top to bottom. So there couldn't be 3/4 of a square or half a square. It had to be a full square for all the squares in this room.
Basically, what he's saying is that they did very complicated math.
Yeah. And so yeah, each side of a square is 45 inches, and they had to be very precise with that. So they used a laser that could shoot down one side, and the laser kind of wrapped around the entire room. So it went up and then all the way around and back down to form a loop. And then with the laser, they knew where to place the tape so that the grids are perfect.
Oh yeah, it is 45 inches.
And go.
The last thing I want to say is that this exhibit has been installed a few times in the past, like in Los Angeles and Chicago, but everywhere that it was installed, they had a room with different dimensions, which means that instead of 45 inches for each side of a square in the other locations, it's probably, which means that instead of 45 inches for each side of a square, it was probably different in the other locations. So they do have to kind of improvise, but the general idea of this room is still the same because they have the light strips forming grids, and there will be a huge screen over there. Just imagine that word, that Herman dude.
Say again, please.
Pee Wee Herman. That's what he calls the
One more
Herman.
time. Louder.
Pee Wee Herman is what my brother calls the Pee Wee dude.
Oh, and one final thing, if they see these lights up there, they're gonna be removed for the final exhibit. So they just take off the lights and paint over it so it's black on the top. And then we hope to.
Oh, and hold on, please.
And the only light sources are gonna be the projector and the light strips.
Can we switch angles so that
Sure.
it doesn't look the same?
Okay.
Like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, Boo Boo, come on this side. Alright, yeah, yep.
So yeah, right now it's a work in progress. They haven't completed it, but we hope to have the opportunity to come back up to San Jose in the future. But we hope to have the opportunity to come back up to San Jose to see this exhibit when it's finally completed.
They're gonna complete it like on August 3rd.
There's back.
It's a press release as well for
Okay.
that. And as Richard mentioned,
Stage, you can see a lot of people. You see
Okay, and go.
Lastly, right?
Oh, the last one we're here. Yeah.
The last time we were here, this exhibit, Break and Bleed, was curtained off because it was still in construction, but now it's completely done, so we're gonna check it out. Let's go. The reason why this exhibit is called Break and Bleed is because it's a process that the artists use when they're working with shapes and lines, which is why there's no landscapes in this exhibit. It's all shapes, lines, and colors. Kind of abstract.
Here, 1, 2, 3. Stand normal. Stand normal. It looks funny in the picture. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, cheese. All right, and go.
When I walked into the gallery, this was the first that caught my attention because it looks so cool. Because it looks so cool. There's so many lines, and It's kind of like a rainbowy pattern, but it's not a rainbow, and it looks a little hypnotizing. And my mom said that it makes her dizzy. Brother, does it make you dizzy?
Well, you see, it's the most, you get the most attention from this painting only because it's the first painting that you see when you walk through. So it's straight away from the entrance.
That's too low.
1, 2, 3. Do the slush to us. All right. We'll go. Are you gonna go see? We'll go. Talk about this one. Talk about this one, Boo.
My mom said that this one also makes her dizzy, and it's a combination of like reddish purplish and bluish grayish.
You have to say it louder.
All right, shall Mom talk?
Wow.
I already forgot what I said.
All right, there you go.
This art piece has red on the. This art piece has a dull red on the right and a dull blue on the left, but it also kind of makes you a little dizzy. And I don't know if you can see it from the camera, but it's possible to like have a hard time distinguishing the colors in the middle. If I don't know, it just the colors look so similar, yet they're so different. This kind of looks like chalk.
Door.
The secret door is still open. We went there earlier. And lastly in this exhibit, right.
Okay.
And lastly in this exhibit, there's colorful stripes on this one, a bunch of black and gray on this, and then pretty much the opposite of this black and gray is the most colorful piece in this installation, in this exhibit. Wait, it's the most colorful piece in this exhibit.
What, along this wall?
It's the most colorful piece along this wall.
Some have passed away, most are from the United States, but there are each of the strands hanging. They all need to be put up one at a time. And every single strand has a piece of fur.
All right, go.
And that is the behind the scenes tour of San Jose Museum of Art. Brother, what was your favorite part of the museum that we saw? Just hurry up. Think of what to say and then say it with us.
Maybe the giant elevator.
The giant elevator? Really? I think my favorite part was seeing the model of the exhibit with the light strips and the giant monitor. And then after seeing that tiny model
Stand closer, okay? All right, here we go.
my favorite part was probably seeing the tiny model of the huge room with the light strips and the monitors. And then after we saw the model, then we got to visit the actual room. So that was cool to like. No, never mind. That's it. And then.
And we hope to see that one time. Oh, and August 6th, right?
Yeah. We hope to come back to the museum.
Closer, okay?
Okay. We hope to come back.
Oh, how about the museum, the exhibit? What's it called?
Oh yeah.
Opens on August 6th,
Yeah.
and we hope to come back to see it.
The exhibit The exhibit opens on August 6th and will be here for around a year, so we hope to come back soon to see the completed, to see it.
Complete installation?
Yeah.
Alright.
The exhibit will open on August 6th and will be here for around a year, so we hope to come back soon to see the completed installation.
And bye-bye.
Alright. Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. Bye!
Bye.